no objection in principle to the proposals, they reference the possibility of conditions, but the matters that would likely want to be covered by them would be contamination, albeit from controlled waters, and also other key factors that would be covered by a condition for a construction environmental management plan. But that's where we are with the views of the Environment Agency, no objection in principle. So, I've also given members a copy of the same information, the same PowerPoint slides that I'll be going through this morning, this afternoon, for your assistance. So, this proposal forms part of a major infrastructure project to reduce the risk of coastal flooding, which is an EIA development, and it's accompanied by an environmental statement. There are some key issues relevant to that, but I'll take you through those in the slides to come. Phase 4A is formed of three... Right. So the scheme is formed of three main components, broadly along that yellow line on the right-hand side aerial image, showing the approximate sort of scheme alignment. So the first component is an earth embankment that starts at 90 degrees to the phase 1 works that have already been done for the Anchorage Park frontage. The second component is the raising of the access road, and the third component is a new sheet pile wall that would be timber clad. Got a few images for you. So this is from the north, so you can make out the cedar fence that's already been done for phase 1. So this is a bund with a sort of footpath cycleway on it, and then rock revetment on the seaward side. So, and these are images of the works that have been done in phase 1. So the proposal is to run a bund 90 degrees and then link up with the access road through a sort of clearing that you've got in the woodland up there around the Kendall's Wharf site. This is an image from the west. Obviously you've got Anchorage Road, you've got the travel light controlled entrance to the site, and so this image is here, and this image is where the road sort of straightens up. And the third image is showing the existing cedar fence south of Kendall's Wharf, this a little bit sort of further to the north, and basically it's running through this bit. Obviously this is quite heavily treed, and so we can't see beyond that point there. So I'd already mentioned phase 4A, which is this bit in here, Kendall's Wharf, is part of a wider scheme to protect 4,234 residential and 490 commercial properties. It has 2 of the 3 roads onto Portsea Island, the only railway line connecting Portsea Island to the mainland, 89 electricity substations, and the Shattered Ancient Monument that is Hillsey Lines. So it's a sort of quarter of a kilometre component of a wider scheme to protect the northern part of Portsea Island. As part of the scheme, the intention is to improve, to continue that path that we saw in the images earlier, and say in here, the bits on this side are those that have either been completed or nearing completion. So this was phase 1, this was phase 2, Milton Common and Tipner Lake phase 3. This is just an image to show it's a low-lying part of the city, and the area in blue would be that part of it that in 100 years' time would be at risk if there were no sea defences in place. Obviously, a project was done to review the priority areas requiring coastal defence works, and the green line on there was the line of a study done by the Environment Agency in 2011 and identified obviously the two key cells requiring works as a priority as North Portsea Island and the other South Sea, and they are separate projects. These are just some images sort of kind of stating the obvious of why those works are necessary. These were the storms in the winter of 2013-14, and they kind of tell the story for themselves, really. So this is the sort of detailed design and the landscape scheme. I've already mentioned the three obviously key components of the scheme, the earth embankment in here. Whilst there will need to be some trees removed, these green areas with a sort of pink line around them are existing trees to be retained. Similarly, down here adjacent to a concrete wall that you've got to the wharf itself, there are some individual trees that are being retained, like these here, and the others are showing new replacement planting that would be native species. So the difficulty of showing sea defences is, I mean, it's a bund, so these are some cross sections. So this is showing you the top part of the proposed embankment at 90 degrees to the existing one, and the rock revetment, which is here, same crest height at plus 4.6 metres above ordnance datum. So this is a section through the proposed earth embankment. This one is a section through the road that needs to be raised in height, which, and in this section here, is approximately 1 metre higher than the existing road. But obviously, in order that those tippers can still get into and out of the aggregates wharf, there are quite long sort of run-ups to raising the road by 1 metre. So, there are quite specific arrangements for considering planning applications that are subject of environmental impact assessment, requiring the decision maker to take into account the information in the environmental statement. Now, the environmental statement document is over 330 pages. So I'm going to give you a very sort of a synopsis of the key information within that document. But this is the same document that has formed the decision making for the first 3 phases of the development: Anchorage Park, Milton Common and Tipney Lake, which, as I've already mentioned, are either complete or nearing completion. So the environmental statement covers the full 8.4 kilometres of the scheme, and phase 4A is around a quarter of a kilometre, where obviously that comes inland. Unlike the other parts of the scheme, there is no need for a marine licence, because it's not interfering with the intertidal zone below mean high water springs. I'm offering this as a conclusion that the environmental statement is considered to demonstrate that these proposed works can be constructed in their entirety without adversely affecting the environment, subject to mitigation, and include some enhancement. But there are 4 key areas that I'll show you in the next 4 slides. North Portsea Island supports habitats and species of significant environmental and nature conservation importance, it's an SPA, an SAC, and Ramsar site. There are high numbers of overwintering birds that use the harbour and mudflats, so normally construction is done outside of that overwintering period. That should be the 1st of April to the last day in September, the 30th. However, because this goes inshore of the harbour, unusually it is going to be capable of being carried out in one winter period. There is a habitats regulation assessment and an ornithological assessment as part of the environmental statement, and following a consultation with Natural England with the use of mitigation measures during that overwintering period, it is not considered to have any significant impact, or it would have a minimal impact. And so in italics there is the advice of Natural England, carried out in strict accordance with the details of the application. It can be excluded that the application will have a significant effect on those designations, either individually or in combination with other plans or projects. The key mitigation measures would require soft start procedures on any percussive piling and screening of the works from the harbour. Importantly, a biodiversity mitigation and enhancement plan would also be part of the recommendation, and it's covered in conditions suggested at the end of your report. There does need to be some removal of vegetation for the working areas and the site hall route accesses, of which this insert plan, this is the existing access into the site. It would potentially be on this side of the access road or this route around what will be the site compound. Once the works have been completed, the temporary access is removed, tree planting will be undertaken in the next winter planting season to enhance the natural environment by native species after the removal of non-native species. Phase 4A includes a reinstated path that can be used. It's predominantly for pedestrians but can be used by cyclists. Obviously Eastern Road already has a commuter cyclist route, but cycling is allowed for within the design. Where possible, improved access will mean no slopes or ramps to the main path. It'll be in the same finish as the phase 1 scheme, and it'll be 2.2 metres wide. Any path closed during construction would require alternative routes during those site works wherever possible. So here's our site, Kendall's Wharf. The nearest listed building is the Harvester at Great Saltons, and the nearest scheduled ancient monument is Hilsey Lines. So there are no heritage assets in the form of monuments, conservation areas or listed buildings in the Phase 4A boundary or close to it. We have advice from Hampshire County Council Archaeology, who are satisfied that the earth embankment would not require any excavation and is very unlikely to disturb prehistoric finds at some depth, and so their recommendation is that no type of watching brief would be necessary. In terms of amenity, the nearest residents are in Anchorage Park. There's some distance from the Phase 4A works, separated by Morrison's supermarket and car park. Residents are likely to be affected by the construction of the new defences, particularly construction traffic, delivery of materials, etc. But the impact will be minimised as far as practicable through planning conditions that are at 4 and 5. That's the Construction Environmental Management Plan and the Construction Traffic Management Plan. So there are other recreational users of that area where you've got the water sports centre, the sailing club and the pitch used by Baffin Rovers FC. Also users of the coastal path are going to be inconvenienced during the construction. And so this leads to the conclusions that Phase 4A works deliver a key and essential piece of infrastructure for the city in the form of new coastal defences and would contribute to the city's wider economic growth and regeneration. It's considered that the likely environmental effects Impacts of the development have been adequately assessed in that environmental statement and subject to appropriate conditions to mitigate would be acceptable, and overall the scheme is not likely to give rise to any significant harm or have any significant adverse effects. During construction, there will be some disruption and inconvenience. There will be local and temporary, and mainly due to during the construction phase caused by plant machinery, foreshore access, site deliveries, and need to remove trees and other vegetation for the scheme footprint. Planning conditions will mitigate the impact as far as practicable. During construction, views and access will be slightly impacted temporarily, but at the end of the day, the site is adjacent to an aggregates wharf that is characterised by industrial activity. Upon completion, the site environment will be reinstated and replanted with improvements where achievable. However, it's considered the completed development would not lead to any adverse effects on the local highway network and, in time, obviously protect local residents, businesses from risk of tidal flooding. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for the officer's report. I think there are a number of questions which do need to be asked, but I will ask my colleagues for their questions. First of all, members. Councillor Udi.
Sorry if I'm being ever so slightly pedantic or my knowledge of ward boundaries isn't very good, but it says it's in Baffins on the front of the report. Is it really? I thought it'd be like more Hillsy.
Cotner.
It's Cotner?
All of it's in Cotner.
Okay, on the front of the report it just says it's in Baffins. I just noticed that and it kind of confused me and threw me a bit, but then when I saw the stones I knew where it was. But anyway, cool, thank you.
Sorry about that.
That's all right.
Councillor Hunt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Banting, on page 18 in condition 6,
Yep.
It says all planting, seeding or turfing comprised in the approved details, etc. in that line. Then it refers to, in brackets, including Appendix V of the environment statement. Where is that, so I can see it? What does that mean?
Right. That drawing is essentially...
Not the drawing. I'm interested in the planting schedule, including Appendix V in the environment statement. So what I'm after is, it says seeding and turfing, so I've got visions of a grass embankment. Presumably it's a grass embankment for a particular reason, but we've just had several reports in Cabinet just now about greening up Portsmouth and about the climate change and a whole raft of other matters. And people are talking about wanting to see our own officers talking about creating paths for insects and other wildlife, so on. So I thought if we were removing trees, we want to seed the embankment with wild meadow flowers, things like that. Is that in there?
Right.
Or is it just grass?
The precise mix, I have read the planting schedule. I'm not sure it references the particular grass mix, but that would be something that would be wholly appropriate to deal with within the other condition at 11, the biodiversity mitigation and enhancement plan. So I totally agree that there is some potential work for demonstrating some overall enhancement to the scheme.
So, is there any way that we can put in there things like meadow flowers or seeding, which encourages bees, butterflies, all these other things, the things that we've just been told about in the previous meeting and which we promised to do something about? So, can we be more specific, in other words, Mr. Banting?
Well, I'm not an ecologist.
No.
I'm happy to take the advice from OMP and other colleagues that we have the agreement with Hampshire County Council that provide that expertise, and it is wholly appropriate to get the type of detail that you're asking for, but it's intended to be done through condition 11.
Very last quickly. So how can I make sure that that would happen? I mean, we've just been given, not grief, but we've just been given a lot of representation from Extinction Rebellion, from councillors and so on, saying that council needs to do more about making sure about biodiversity and climate change, a whole raft of issues. And this is something that came up, these corridors, our own officers talking about greening up the city. So I quite accept that the grass embankment will be a sort of grass embankment, but it could be like a field of meadow flowers. I've made my point. I hope that can happen somehow, but I just wonder how we keep it in the report. I know it'll be in the minutes, but actually making sure that somebody sees it.
I mean, Coastal Partnership is part Portsmouth City Council, so I'm happy to speak to colleagues within the team. They are represented here today and are hearing what you're saying.
I think that is probably the best way forward. Rather than try at this stage to change the recommendations to put in that amount of detail, that we note it in the minutes and it is taken forward to the Coastal Partnership. Councillor Atkins.
Yeah, just on that point, I was also going to say that, but perhaps I can see that a lot of these conditions involve a plan being submitted for approval. Approval of that plan, will that take place by officers, or are some of these plans likely to come before the planning committee itself to have a look at?
The discharge of conditions is normally delegated to officers,
yeah.
but obviously with something as technical as a biodiversity management plan, we will rely on experts to advise us on that. It's not my decision as such.
No, yeah.
But it is delegated to officers normally, yes.
But the proper place for kind of the detail of exactly what will be included, what types of planting, seeding of meadows, which is a really good idea, I think, to seed meadows along where possible instead of open grassland. That would be done at the kind of approval stage of all these reports when they're submitted, wouldn't it? So perhaps writing to officers or writing to the people who will prepare those reports to make sure they include those ideas is the way to go about it. But yeah.
I suspect what the intention would be is more of the same of the type of work that's been done in similar embankments on the earlier phases. But I'll leave it to the partnership team and our ecologist.
Councillor Smythe?
I'm not suggesting any amendment, but I do think Councillor Hunt's suggestion is a really good one, and we seem to have completely cross-party agreement on that, or not. This is a party political thing, and I think it's really important that we anticipate some of the things that will be in the local plan and make this part of a green corridor with biodiversity.
Right. A few questions from the chair whilst my colleagues are thinking of things to ask. First of all, the existing footpath, which is alongside the high water mark in the north of your diagram there, will that footpath, existing footpath, be retained, or will that be allowed to decay?
Right. The existing footpath is the new works that are shown in those. So that's the footpath shown in these images. I think. Do you mean that there is an unmade path around the edge?
That is the one to which I was referring.
Thank you. It will still be there, but there will obviously be potentially more desirable routes through the new 2.2 metre wide footpath. But it's there, and on completion of works it will still be there.
Okay, so it will remain as a supplementary footpath. Thank you. The second question I have concerns the report from Southern Water concerning a sewer which runs under this site. Do we know anything of the depth of the sewer, and is it likely to be affected in any way by the works which are being carried out?
Right. We don't, which is why Southern Water requested a condition, and that is covered in 10C, that says, 10A requires the layout of existing sewer and drainage infrastructure, and C requires measures to be undertaken to protect any public sewer or other drainage infrastructure that is found. Obviously, the plan provided by Southern Water gives an approximate indication.
Very approximate indication.
But that, obviously, that's why they require some clarity around where it is and how it will be protected during those works.
Where is Tennessee? Because I can't find it on the report. 19.
Suggested condition number 10, subsection. Thanks.
Right, there are a number of things which still need to be done, and you've mentioned one of them in answer to Councillor Hunt. There's the Biodiversity Mitigation Enhancement Plan, there's the Reptile Mitigation Strategy, there's work from the Council as the leading local flood authority. Are these in hand? Who is doing them? And when will you be able to take those into consideration?
Right. It will be the Eastern Southern Coastal Partnership that will be providing any details to be approved by condition. I suspect it's something that they will need to engage in quite quickly because the intention is to carry out the construction over the coming winter period with site set up even sort of next month. So it is something that I envisage will be submitted promptly, and it's in the form of a discharge of conditions application.
So we have the assurance then that work will not start until those reports are available and have been considered.
A material planning start wouldn't take place until they were satisfactorily resolved. That's correct.
Other questions, members? Councillor Hunt.
Yeah, so I'm always intrigued by earthworks like this. This is meant to, well, hopefully we'll ensure that sea levels don't rise, but I doubt it. Rabbits. Well, I know if I was God, you know, there we are, rabbits. Up at Portsbridge, I always spy the rabbits burrowing away into the earthworks, apparently holding up the bridge. And I embraced it years back, and I was concerned that such a great weight was put on these earthworks. But what would happen here then, for example, because rabbits like embankments in particular, and these would be earthworks, I presume. I mean, is it on top of stone or brick or rubble covered in earth, or would they be able to burrow into it, or is it just completely earth? And if it's all completely earth, just got visions in my mind of a number of rivers that have had these embankments, and I know it's not your decision to do this, it's a completely different place, but it's just a question I've got, when the sea hits it, will it wash the earth through? Could there be gaps? How can we be sure that if we give it planning permission, it will be sound from rabbits and sea?
Certainly, obviously, the other phases have included embankments. I don't know that rabbits could undermine its structural integrity to a degree that it wouldn't work anymore. I imagine that's something, and would hope that somebody would have given some thought to. Whether, I don't know whether you want to offer any observations on the structural integrity of the embankment. I'm sorry to put you on the spot. So this is Gillian Branson of the partnership.
Could you come and speak at the table, please?
My apologies, I've run out of time. I thought it was a simple application.
I'm never simple in the planning.
No, they may be simple, but they may be long.
Yes, I can confirm that the engineers involved in designing the earthworks embankment have considered those issues and anything else that would be likely to undermine the embankment. More significantly would be significant flows and wave energy as well, and incidents that would undermine it. So they have designed it by a multitude of different compacting layers. There's gravel at the base, part of embedding it into the ground, and it is a very stable and very wide structure at its base.
Not reassuring.
Good.
Councillor Atkins?
But don't underestimate rabbits. This may be a question that's not going to be answerable until the construction traffic management plan is produced, but are we anticipating road closures or any significant disruption to Eastern Road, or do we think that it's like just to be able to go flow in and out in the ordinary course of that traffic changing system at that junction?
There is no Hiles objection, and you haven't got an objection from Kendall Brothers either. It is something that I know that the partnership have sort of worked out to a particular level of detail, albeit that the final version of that will need to be when there is an approved developer for the project that will provide these sort of final parts of the jigsaw.
Members, before we move on to the final comments, Alan Banting, the audio was not working at the start. You made a set of comments on conditions. Would you wish to repeat them for the record?
Okay, so we mentioned the information that was already in the update sheets. There was reference to the fact that condition 3 refers to the overwintering period, and I transposed the numbers. So the overwintering period for birds is 1st of October to the 31st of March. And then the other comment was around the Environment Agency that obviously have been involved in the project for the full 8.4 kilometres, but obviously also in detail for phase 4A as well. They are funding the scheme, but it has been found that by wanting to inquire whether their comments had been sent but in any way sort of misplaced, it turns out that they say they didn't receive the original consultation. What they do confirm is that they have no objection in principle to the proposals. They've referenced conditions, and typically those matters would be to do with site contamination from a controlled waters point of view, and other matters that would be appropriate to cover within the condition that is for a construction environmental management plan.
Thank you. We've now got that for the record. Sorry?
One more question.
You have one more question, Councillor Hunt. Okay.
So, I did pick up when we were going through the conditions, we did hear about trees being removed. You said some trees will be removed. You did mention some other planting of trees. Will every tree that gets removed, will it be replaced somehow? So for every one that goes out, one comes in, at the very least.
Part of the problem, and it is referenced in the comments by the arboricultural officer, is right, midway, page 10.
Page 11, your head. It's okay.
So there's reference here to the fact that much of the trees and vegetation within the site are generally low quality and appear largely unmanaged. It's woodland, and many of it is sort of self-seeded. So I don't want to say to you that it is one for one, because in part there's such low quality and such sort of groups that may not be the case. But if I can just explain that the trees that are here in that woodland groups are retained. The trees they're not particularly attractive. They're sort of leylandii, but they will be retained because they screen the wharf in that section there. And then the sort of lighter green coloured trees are existing trees to be retained. But there is obviously other significant tree planting that you can see on this landscape plan that is intended to mitigate the loss of some of that low quality. But part of this is already a sort of cleared glade, so it's not as though this is a sort of a large swathe that's being removed. But frankly, the embankment, trees don't like having, sort of being buried in spoil. So anything that is within that embankment swathe would need to be removed and is relying on the replacement of native species.
Thanks. I get that about, I read it that, you don't want the roots to undermine the embankment. I seriously get that. But I can see in there, I mean, even from the aerial view here, the satellite view, there are some substantial trees in there. I can get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9, 10, about a dozen substantial trees. I haven't gone there and looked at it. I'll go and look tonight though, but there's some substantial trees in there. I just want to make sure, because we're talking about greening Portsmouth, and we don't see, and we're talking about a report earlier on. I want to join all these reports and what we're doing up, as we've been asked to do, that we get a loss of trees and tree cover. So where are the other trees? I don't mind about the leylandii. As far as I'm concerned, they can go and put something native back. But where will these additional trees go? Have we any idea how many and whereabouts?
So the new individual specimen trees proposed are shown on that landscape plan. So obviously starting down here, through here, I say there are some lighter green. So there's one there that's existing. Those are existing. It's the new trees are the darker coloured ones. I just can't promise it's one for one. But at the end of the day, even if it wasn't one for one, I think because you're being invited to make a balanced planning decision, obviously the merits of protecting the nearly sort of 5,000 homes and 600 businesses would probably outweigh any sort of shortfall in numbers if it isn't on a one-for-one basis. But that is quite hard to do when much of it is just groups self-seeded or of such low quality.
Councillor Atkins?
Perhaps worth noting on that point as well that the arboreal advice is that there's going to be an improvement overall. So even if there's slightly lower numbers, it can still produce an improvement if they have more space for clearings and so on. So the arboreal's expertise presumably is it's going to be improved.
Yeah.
I think that's the point.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay, members, comments. Councillor Hunt.
Yes, although all these things are happening, we have to make sure they're seen to be happening, because not everybody thinks that they are happening, and it's really important to join up what we do in cabinet and in committees and scrutiny with planning as well. So that's why I laboured the point. So clearly it has to be done for the reasons you described just now, and I feel more reassured about the improvement of the green cover and look forward to seeing it. So I'm happy to, unless you want to move the officer's report, Mr. Chairman.
No, you?
Yeah, to move the report.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Smythe. Any further comments? No. Those in favour of the officer's report, please indicate. That is unanimous. Thank you very much. That concludes the entertainment for this afternoon. Thank you for your attendance.
Clearly given our thought already. There's the I understand.